Hello, everyone. What's in your trash? Welcome to the Future Oxford Speaker Series on Zero Waste Innovators. We're looking at Waste Reduction Week, and welcome. I want to introduce you to a few people today, but before we do that, my name is Carrie. I'm a volunteer with Future Oxford in the Zero Waste Subcommittee, and I've been really interested in trash and what people put into their trash and how we can eliminate some things that go into waste. Rather than having it sent to landfill, we can instead find ways to recycle, but instead, really, we want to reduce, reuse, and repurpose some of those things in a different, new, and interesting way. So today, we've been looking at local examples of Future Oxford's zero waste people in our community in the commercial sector previously in our last video. And next we're going to explore institutional waste. So get a chance to view some of the other videos in this series. That would be really great. But today is a live broadcast and it's interactive, and you're encouraged to use the chat feature. If you want to share comments or ask a question or even offer your own zero waste advice to the audience, that would be really great. This is all thanks to the support of the Oxford County Library System. We're going to speak with Sarah McDonald later, who is the system support librarian. And we have an Oxford County communications team, as well as a Future Oxford partnership that have been wonderful at making this speaker series come to pass, as well as our special guests. So this being Waste Reduction Week, you might have seen advertising that we're going to be talking about industries today, but actually we're changing functions and going to residential waste. So this will be for everyone in your home. You can do this in smaller scale as well, too, perhaps in your small business. But we're going to be asking you what's in your trash. So these residential attempts at zero waste have been pretty effective. And Oxford County doesn't have a very terrible diversion rate of getting things out of landfill. We're pretty good at recycling, but we can always do better. So if you're a member of industry in Oxford County and curious about zero waste, we'd love to hear from you in the future. But before we jump into residential waste and learn a little bit more about that and our special guest, I'd like you to be introduced to our Dennis Guy, the Manager of Strategic Initiatives for Oxford County. Hi, Dennis.
Hey, Carrie, thank you very much and welcome. For those of you joining us tonight, thanks for tuning in. Future Oxford is excited to be supporting the series of 3 sessions being held this month. Last week, we had Nancy from Red Buttons and Danielle from Wild Comfort Body Care. This week, we have Brian Smith, and next week, we have Tom Butler, a local educator, farmer, and environmentalist. He'll be joined by Chris Marion from the Woodstock General Hospital. So for those of you who are tuning in to tonight's recording, you might be watching it in the future because it'll be available. I trust that you had enough food scraps for the flux capacitor in your DeLorean to make it here safely. My name is Dennis Guy, and I'm here on behalf of the Future Oxford Partnership, which is a group of passionate champions that believes in the vision of an Oxford where communities, economies, and environments thrive together. I'm not going to take up too much time for our guest speakers this evening, but I do want to try and draw a bit of a line to connect the dots between Future Oxford and tonight's event. So about 5-6 years ago, a group of people determined that Oxford could benefit from a county-wide look at community sustainability. So individuals, organizations, business, and governments came together to determine what's most important to maintaining a high quality of life here and create an inspiring vision for anyone to aim for. The result is the Future Oxford Community Sustainability Plan, which was released in 2015, and it's structured into 3 pillars: community, economy, and environment. And the plan documents 70 key actions that build upon the sustainable practices we already have, and about 94% of those have seen progress made by a broad range of community stakeholders, and those actions continue to see progress into today. So throughout the past 5 years, Future Oxford has coordinated and/or participated in a number of initiatives, including an in-person version of the speaker series, which was hosted at various libraries throughout the county, showcasing local entrepreneurs with sustainable business practices. We invited residents to learn about energy efficient buildings, and we also hosted a workshop on electric and hybrid vehicles. These were all back in 2018. This fall, we've brought the speaker series back to life in a virtual format. And to our pleasant surprise, we had a great turnout last week, showing us that not only do we have some well-regarded waste innovators in Oxford, but that many of us are waste innovators ourselves. So with that, I'll turn it back to Carrie so that we can get into tonight's conversation.
Thanks, Dennis. Yeah, the Zero Waste Subcommittee of Future Oxford's filled with interesting people. We have people in the industry sector, we have people in agriculture, we have Southwestern Public Health representatives, we have people that are concerned citizens, we also have the founder of Transition to Less Waste. So we've got a lot of great people, as well as waste management staff, looking at these things, and there's a great way to improve within everything that we're doing. So let's dive right into the residential sector. So maybe, Sarah, we could pull up the lovely graphic on our garbage breakdown. And this is residential waste from the county. You can see what's in your garbage. Now, most residential areas have kind of the same breakdown. This is exactly what we have in our Oxford County waste that people are putting at the curbside by weight and by volume. You can see, of course, weight of garbage is a little bit different. So you see the brown section on the bottom of the graph is the garbage that is headed to landfill that we don't have any other options for currently at this time. The blue middle section is things that are recyclable, that should be in the blue bin or being recycled, but that are ending up in the waste stream instead. And then the green section on the top is the organics. So anything in the organic section that could be composted and also could be eliminated from the waste stream. So primarily, we mostly have 1/3 of each section. 1/3, it breaks down slightly differently, of course, you can see here, but it's almost 1/3 waste, 1/3 recycling that could be removed out of your garbage, as well as at least 1/3 compost, which could be composted and also eliminated from your waste. So if you're able to eliminate 2/3 of the waste that's going out to the curbside at the road that you have to put a garbage bag tag on in Oxford County, that would not only save you money, it would also save you the time to take it out to the curb, and you'd be saving that space in the landfill as well too. So that's just our breakdown of the residential section of our garbage. So I find that stuff really interesting. And I think you might find that all the stats and data on that interesting as well too. Again, if you have any comments, questions to share, please use the chat function and we'll see if you can pull those into our presentation. Now, there's one more thing. So today, during this week, is Waste Reduction Week. If you are part of Oxford County's Twitter feed or their Facebook or any of their social media, Oxford County, the waste management team has put together some tips and tricks about waste reduction for each of the days of Waste Reduction Week. Waste Reduction Week in Canada, you can go to the main waste reduction website at wrwcanada.com, and that leads you to the main page where you can see all of the different themes for Waste Reduction Week. Each day is a different theme. And today, being Thursday, is all about plastics and plastic pollution. So there's lots of great information on the Waste Reduction website, as well as the Oxford County Waste Management site that we'll talk about soon. But maybe we can have a look at the infographic about plastics from the Waste Reduction Week website. Oh, nope, that's different. Okay, so we'll come back to that one in a second. I think the waste reduction graphic is all about plastics and how plentiful they are in Canada. Oh, there we go. So if you check out some information on Waste Reduction Week, this is one of the plastic facts you can find about the 8.3 billion metric tons of recycling, things that have been recycled. A lot of these facts you can learn more about, but basically a lot of the information that they have found is accurate throughout lots of parts of Canada and North America. So the hard to recycle plastics are a bit of a problem, and they're making a lot of environmental pickups and litter issues around the world. Really, people are coming to realize that although some plastics are really helpful, the single-use plastics that you use for such a short time and are thrown away are causing really large degradation in our environment. So this is something even the federal government's looking at, banning certain types of plastics or implementing a phase out of specific kinds of plastic in the future. So this is something that Zero Waste Oxford is looking at, and we're looking not only at either plastic bans or ways to reduce plastics, but to teach people about some alternatives to those options. So thank you. All right, so if we would now pull in our lovely special guest. And our special guest today is Brian Smith. He wears many hats, and we would like, oh, there you are, Brian.
I
Hello.
am. Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm well.
Good. Now, Brian, thanks for joining us today. Now, you are our chair of the Future Oxford Zero Waste Subcommittee, but you wear a lot of different hats. So tell us a little bit about the community groups that you're involved with that have an eye on zero waste.
Thanks very much for that question. I was just thinking about the plastic waste thing as well. And I was thinking part of the thing with plastic waste and why it's worrisome is it ends up in our food. So if you see me starting to bend, that's because I have so much plastic in my body, I've become more flexible. And maybe that flexibility helps me work with all those groups. So as you said, Carrie, I am involved in Future Oxford. In fact, was involved from the start. Was on the steering committee that helped set that up. Um, that was a fabulous community consultation that led us to decide what it is we have and what it is we want to do. And one of the things that we have is we have a really good environment. And what do we want to do? We want to keep it that way or even improve it. I'm also the chair of the environmental pillar, which involves more than just zero waste. It involves the 100% renewable energy. It involves the reforestation projects, all the people that are doing wetland restoration and all sorts of other really amazing projects on the environmental side. And then, as you said, I co-chair the Zero Waste Oxford group, and we'll talk about that a bit later. I'm also involved in some community groups that have an interest in the environment and therefore in the reduction of waste going into the environment. So I'm a member of the Oxford Coalition for Social Justice, which has an environmental view and thinks that there is no social justice without clean drinking water. If there's plastics in it, we don't have that social justice. I'm in the Opal Alliance, who are opposed to garbage of all kinds. I also participate in a couple of things that engage in activities that you would at first think, no, this isn't a zero waste activity, but they are very much that. So I've been a lowly, helpful dishpan hand with with Supper Club and with the Lunch Bunch, who've now transformed into a community meals thing, sending out compostable containers of food on a weekly basis to people who are in need of food. And obviously, in that food preparation, there's lots of ways of avoiding waste, but there's also ways of avoiding waste and of that kind that you talked about earlier. So neither of those groups discards anything that is compostable into the garbage. They're very rigorous about that, and I'm very happy about that. And it's actually very simple for them to do. When they're peeling things, all that goes into a bucket that's lined with a compostable bag. And then all that bag goes into either a composter or into a digest of some kind. I'm interested in and have been pursuing this lead now just recently in a group called Food Rescue. We're all about getting food out of the industrial and commercial sectors, out of supermarkets and out of food producers and out of farms that would otherwise be wasted, and getting it in the hands of groups that will make sure that it's offered to people. I'm on the Social Planning Council of Oxford, who's a brilliant group that have been doing lots of research on, among other things, about how we can increase the quality of life in Oxford County. And one of the things they're looking at is how do you massively reduce both hunger and poverty. Well, one of the things that you do is you make sure that food is offered generously to people so that it doesn't become a major expense. I am currently the president of Gravel Watch Ontario, and you might ask, what do we do at Gravel Watch? We watch it being dug up and wonder about why we're digging up so much of the countryside that could be food producing. I'm a member of ARM 11, which is an acronym for Active Retired Members of 11 of our teachers union. And in my spare time, of which I have copious amounts, I also do some work for a group called ISE, International Exchanges, in which we try to find students who are interested in doing an international exchange in times when it's more safe to do so because of COVID. And they then are matched with somebody, spend some time with them, spend some time in their country matched with them as well. And a really interesting project that Oxford County has engaged in through Future Oxford is to offer those kids an opportunity to do some research and bring back ideas from European countries that would apply. You think about it, somehow Europe, with far less resources than Canada, with Ontario, with Oxford County, with far less resources, has managed to do centuries of good quality of life. So how do they do that? Obviously, they're in a circular economy rather than a linear economy. They reuse things rather than throwing them away. And whenever you throw things away, it looks like I'm throwing at you, Carrie. Sorry. Whenever you throw things away, they do land on somebody, and that's not what we want.
Excellent. Thanks for that. You definitely have your fingers in a lot of pies there, Brian Smith. So those are all really interesting to hear. And I think a lot of our contributors online also may be friends of yours from some of those committees, which is perfect. Now, we'll talk about the food rescue in a little bit, but tell me a little bit more about Zero Waste Oxford and the Zero Waste Subcommittee specifically, and then what the maybe objectives are, or maybe some accomplishments that they've met over the last handful of years.
Mm-hmm. So Zero Waste Oxford is a subcommittee under that environmental pillar that I talked about before. So it's part of Future Oxford. And we realized that one of the ways that we'll manage to sustain the quality of life here is by not wasting things, and wasting things that are recoverable resources, wasting things that are useful, wasting things that cost us money if we throw them out. So most people assume that once you're done with something, you throw it out and it stops costing you. But it costs you in multiple ways. It can cost you in environmental ways, in health ways. And it costs money to build more dumps. And the county dump, part of our plan is to make sure that the county dump, which actually was already supposed to have been filled, but through aggressive work by people on various things, particularly on the residential sector, have done a good rate, have extended the life of that landfill near Salford at the waste management facility significantly. Our goal is to get it to the year 2100. By which point people say, what do you mean landfill? We don't do landfills. That's archaic, right? So it's to extend it out. By doing so, that means huge savings for everybody who lives in the county. Because as you can imagine, an actual landfill is not cheap to expand or to build, and it's not cheap to maintain. So if we can reduce the amount of waste going there, that's great. So the committee has a couple of goals, both of which I think are being managed this evening by this conversation. So one is to educate people, to talk to people about what they can do to pull ideas together from other people. And the other thing is to have those conversations as well with other levels of government, particularly provincial level of government that has the most influence on this, about what could be done better by our municipality doing things, by members of our population doing things, or by the province making those things possible, or in some cases mandating them. We've argued frequently for them that the Waste Free Ontario Act is a brilliant idea, and it would be better if it were more and better. So we have asked them to actually speed up the process by which they make all those changes. We have asked them to add more changes. We've asked them to harmonize. So what we said is, for in terms of messaging, to get it clear, it would be good if somebody who lives in Oxford County but actually works in London did the same thing with waste in both places, so they didn't have to constantly rethink what they're doing. So we asked them to harmonize upwards so that if Oxford County's figured out something and, say, Norfolk County doesn't do that, that Norfolk County would ask us how we do it, and then they would do it. And conversely, if Elgin County is doing something that we haven't figured out, they'd share those ideas. So harmonize upward, get those things going. So we've had some really interesting conversations with them, and we've had some really interesting conversations within the county as well. So Dennis, in the introduction, he talked about our 2018 series on sustainable entrepreneurs. In every case, those entrepreneurs were driving waste down as a way of driving down their costs, as well as increasing the value of what they're selling, because you have to deduct the cost of waste from what you're selling when somebody has to deal with it later, right? So some really good stuff there, and have supported other people. You mentioned earlier that we had people from public health involved as well, because that obviously is a concern in all the ways, a concern in the ways in which you're going to handle waste, and a concern about waste being mishandled too. So we've been very, very careful that we don't do anything that would put anybody's health at risk. I'll give you one short example on why public health was so important. Um, so we all know that paper towels are made out of trees, so they're compostable. And it's all fine and dandy if in sub-public site where there are public towels and not blow dryers. And if you do the calculations, apparently they come out even in environmental impact. Anyways, so if you use that paper towel and that paper towel ends up being composted, that's actually beneficial. But if somebody adds a used Kleenex to that paper towel, it has viral matter in it, whether you're in times of COVID or not, and could have some negative consequences because viral matter doesn't decay in the way you would want it to in composting situations. It needs significantly higher heat. So taking care of those things is really important.
Excellent. Thanks, Brian. Let's pull in a comment from Steve about microplastics. So hopefully you can see this. Microplastics are becoming a problem. They already have been found, I know, personally, I've listened to studies from University of Western Ontario students and professors that have studied the Thames Valley region and looked at the Thames River, and every site that they went to had microplastics. So he says, not only is it in our waterways, lakes, and oceans, it's in our bodies, and recent studies have uncovered that they're in our bodies as well. So I would suggest that is the key issue above global warming. So Steve thinks if there's a pandemic of man's own creation, that this is it. So that's Steve's comment. So thank you for that, Steve. Microplastics, as one specific example, right? Plastics aren't in our environment breaking down into tinier and tinier pieces is a really huge problem. And if they are in our bodies, right? And it'd be interesting to know how many people, if they did studies of interesting people. Maybe Steve can add a link or a comment of where some of the information about the microplastics he'd like to share. You're welcome to put those in the comments too. Thanks, Steve, for that.
So just on the topic of microplastics, they are extremely dangerous. They are in our food supply, and they're in our food supply. You think that they're probably coming from things that are in river water, but no, they're far more extensive than that. So they're in vegetable crops and other sources of proteins as well. So they are really of consideration, and they're something that accumulate. So bioaccumulation happens, technical term. Basically what happens is they become prevalent in some species that we consume. There's more and more of them in those species. There's more and more of them in us because our bodies don't get rid of them very quickly. So there's real consequences there. There have been recent studies that show that when you go to a beach, there's significant amounts of beads of plastic. So they break down physically, but they don't disappear. There's a similar issue actually with some kinds of biodegradable plastic, because there are compostable plastics and there are biodegradable plastics. And in some cases, they biodegrade, and that's fine and dandy, but they, in fact, biodegrade into two other forms of plastic, both of which are still serious pollution and are contaminants and are problems for our bodies. So as soon as I see something is biodegradable, I want to know what it becomes. The same thing is when I see that, if I go to a beach and I find a piece of polished glass, I know it shouldn't be there in the first place because that indicates that somebody was throwing stuff away where they shouldn't. But that's inert because it's essentially silica in a fused form. But plastics in broken down form continue to break down and then they enter the food stream. So as Steve said, a really serious, serious issue. And makes me very happy that one of the people I've talked to is actually engaged in projects that are plastic negative. So they're actually taking plastics out of the environment and using more of those than they would if they were not using all recyclable goods. Yeah, serious issue. Thank you, Steve.
Excellent. Maybe now would be also a good time to pull in the previous visual we had about film plastics. So So we'll have, I'm not sure what I'll be able to do, thank you, now that it's full screen. So this, what you're looking at here is the materials that are accepted and not accepted in the Film Plastics Oxford County pilot program. Our recycling contractor has changed, and the number 2 and number 4 film plastics that used to be accepted into our blue bin program are no longer accepted. You might have noticed that in the surrounding county. If you have clean, dry, and empty bags, for example, grocery shopping bags that I'm hoping are you're phasing out very soon, or you end up with them for some other reason. If you get rid of all the food residue, styrofoam, paper and receipts, stickers, and any type of rigid plastics, those are removed, and you avoid loose film and bundle it if it's possible. The green side is the acceptable kind. So things like grocery bags, bread bags, overwrap, dry cleaning bags, bubble wrap, newspaper bags, any sort of pillow film used for packaging, empty garbage bags, or milk bags. The unacceptable items, things like foil chip bags, grape bags that are crinkly plastic, netting used for oranges or onions, pet food bags, cheese wrappers, salt bags, cling wraps, tarps, and cereal and food insert bags like cracker inserts and biodegradable plastics are not acceptable. So check those out. This is also available on the Oxford County Waste Management site that you can look this up. Thank you for that visual. But those film plastics that are in the pilot, things like, I just got this one. This came, I just had flyers dropped on my doorstep, and came in this lovely film plastic bag that I did not ask for. But nevertheless, this is part of the pilot program that I can now collect these items and drop them off. Now, they're not collected through your blue bin, but you can take your film plastics, the specific acceptable kind, to either the Tillsonburg or the Woodstock transfer station, or to the Waste County Waste Management Facility in Salford for those film plastics. Brian, did you want to mention anything about the film plastics trial?
Well, yes. So what's really important in the film plastic trial is that we get clean plastic. So if you get, for instance, a bag of bread and there's a stick-on label that's actually glue and paper on it, before you put that plastic bag in with the other things, bagging them, it's a great way to stop them from flying around and being loose. Snip out that label. That will destroy the value of that plastic because it can be recycled all the while it is pure, and apparently it's about a 3% contamination rate. That will mean that that whole load would get rejected, and that would be terrible. The nice thing about doing that is that if you've got some space in a garage, you can bag those until you have a reason to go to one of those sites anyways, or it's on a route that you're already driving so that you're saving fuel in the same process. So in my case, I'm saving all my plastic bags, but I have some of the CFL bulbs as well, which I know have mercury in them, and therefore they are hazardous waste. I'm going to make sure that I make a trip with those to an appropriate drop-off point, and do only one trip when I've got several of those things to do. Do not mix, and it does say that very clearly, the very bottom item, any compostable bags into that film plastic. Then it destroys the quality of that film plastic, and the compostable bag being compostable shouldn't be going in that stream anyways. It could be wrapping up something leafy or peels or something out of your kitchen sink and going into your composter at home. But that's a great pilot, and what I'm hoping is that the pilot will be so successful that they'll be able to extend that and have more drop-off points, which will make it somewhat easier for everybody to do, and will again boost our numbers, and that will result in a decrease in the quantity of stuff going in our garbage, and therefore lengthening the time at which that site will be available for us to use, and therefore reducing costs for everybody.
Yeah, you're right. These hard to recycle plastics are a bit of there's so many different kinds, and not all of them are labeled very well. So this can be a really big waste management problem at the waste management facility too. So I think hopefully this will help people being able to try to identify what plastics are recyclable in our system and what aren't, because every municipality has a different system, right? Tell us a little bit about Transition to Less Waste, a local not-for-profit that helps reduce waste created by specific events and helps train people how to reduce their waste.
Yeah, so Transition Less Waste is a great group of people. They have a board with several members on it, and they have lots of volunteers. And I'm suspecting lots of people have encountered either Transition Less Waste or people who have heard about them. So what they do is they offer several things. They offer materials and training. So if I was going to, in post-COVID times, host 100 people for my backyard party in the summer of 2021, I'm going to be optimistic that we're post COVID by then. I might not have 100 sets of dishes, but I could borrow them from Transition Less Waste in exchange for a donation. Um, there's a sliding scale on the cost if I wash the dishes or my guests wash the dishes, um, because that would be the rule at my house. If my guests wash the dishes and I return them all clean and sanitized in a triple sink process, then they ask for a smaller donation than if I'm returning them dirty, because obviously somebody has to wash them. They have cutlery too, so that you don't have to buy any of those throwaway plastic forks and knives and spoons that are just nasty anyways, because they break when you're digging into whatever it is you have on your plate. In the same way as their plates are substantial, and some of them actually have this wonderful thing that allow you to stand and eat and chat with your friends while you're eating. They have a widened rim on the one side, just the perfect place to plant your thumb so your thumb isn't in your coleslaw. And then you can stand and eat and maintain it quite level. So they have those dishes that they're prepared to lend out, and they provide training. And they've done some training events again through Future Oxford, where they've talked to people about if you're doing an event, how do you do an event that goes zero waste? So there's more than just the dishes involved. How do you plan to eliminate the waste right at the start? So I know that they've done some training, and it's been quite amazing. Anybody who's been to the Canterbury Music Festival in its last few years saw Transition Less Waste people there at work. People came from other places and did tours. Carrie, I think you did some of them too. Did tours to find out how it all works. So spreading that word out and again harmonizing it with other people. Um, the Sweetburg Lions decided at one point at one of their famous fish fries that they were going to go zero waste. So they did two things. Firstly, they talked to Transition Less Waste about what could they provide them and how would it work and got the training and all that. They removed the garbage cans. As soon as there were no garbage cans, people weren't looking for a place to put garbage. They were looking for some other solution. And they were helpful people, some of them teens, and I think some of them were earning those volunteer hours they need to get out of high school. So benefit to them as well, saying, oh, you have some plates? I'll take them. Um, and what they would do is they would scrape any remaining food into the compost, and then they put the dishes through a pre-wash, and then they get properly washed where they got returned. So that was really good. And so Canterbury obviously is a big event. Sweetburg Lions was a smaller event, but still substantial. It was more people than I'd invite to dinner. It was close to 600, is my understanding. And they also did the farm show. So at the farm show, people from all over the country come to see that and recognize here's leadership on the part of Transition to Less Waste in our community. So they've been really vital in doing that, working really on a shoestring, and with lots of volunteer power. So I really want to do a shout out to all sorts of people who volunteered at various events to do things in their sinks in a park, where you have hot water being poured in a sink, and you could do the triple thing like you would in a restaurant. Um, and everything comes out clean at the end. They have lots of great advice. They are the first place I saw the distribution of paper straws to get those plastic straws out of the system, because plastic straws mess up the machinery that would do sorting. They are made out of recycled plastics, but because of their shape and size, they don't get recycled. So they're a dead loss. And a paper straw makes a lot of sense. So I saw them intervening to make sure that was in place. So lots of innovation from them, and lots of good meals as a result, and great events.
Yeah, thanks. And Transition, I've seen them do a lot of research on the back end and a really great Facebook page, so other people can check out Transition Less Waste in that way as well too.
Yeah, I
Brian,
probably shouldn't say it as a verb, but they could Google them and find them.
yes, they sure could.
Certainly. Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. What resources locally have you found to help you personally reduce waste in your home or your work?
Mm. Well, since all my work is voluntary, I guess I can't talk about working in a commercial or an industrial um, site, but I had reason to consult because of the changes that we've had. I've had reason to consult the wasteline.ca, which is on the county site, which has some really useful things on it. It describes some of the things about recycling. It describes the difference between the recycling that's done by the city of Woodstock and by the rest of the county. The city of Woodstock has its own provider. It has a really neat gizmo where you just say, "What do I do with?" and you just plug in the thing, and it will tell you immediately. Um, and sometimes you'll plug in a word, and it will offer you alternatives to say, "Do you mean this or that?" Because it seems to understand synonyms, so you don't have to know the official name on it. So the gizmo works really well for somebody who maybe has a different name for it. There's also a game on it that would be really fun to do and see how well you do on it. Um, I played all of the levels of it, so there's various levels of difficulty. I played all of the levels of it, which does tell you that it must be an interesting game because it held my interest. Um, I would also like to talk about a little bit about three other things. Well, no, four other things. So, firstly, I want to talk about what do you do with waste meat and bone. So there is another solution. I know you're going to ask me at some point about composting, so we'll leave it for that. But it also
It's
helps.
it's coming up soon. Do you want to talk about it now? Because how
No,
about
we'll
this?
go to that because I'm on a roll here.
How about
Um,
this? Yeah, how about this? Maybe we can have an image come up of what to do with those things. Can we guess? Should we guess? If you have a guess of what to do with those things, is it?
Yes. So the green cone digester, it's not a composter, it's a digester. It's the way to go with fat and skin and bone and that sort of stuff. You see on one side of the image, there's a basket that is perforated. That goes in the ground. And that allows then all the microbial action from the ground and the worms to get in it and really work at it. You also get a microbial starter to get it going. And then there's the double cones up on top. Actually circulate air, which is why it's so odor free. I mean, if you open it and stick your face in, you might get some odor, but otherwise you're not going to encounter too much odor. And it also means that it actually produces heat, which helps that breakdown. They fill very slowly. You can have one for years and it won't fill because it, in fact, liquefies all the things below. Another way to deal with everything except, I guess, the solid bone matter is to know somebody who's got lots of pets. So at Christmas time, the traditional turkey renders some bones. So after I've made soup and boiled those bones down, there's still something on them that my friend with lots of cats wants. So she gets some. So that's a useful thing to do. On a total different category of things that might be waste, I suggest that you frequent the retail charities. So there are lots of stores. I'll just name a few, but there are more than what I'm going to name. So there's Salvation Army stores and there are Goodwill Industries. There's a whole bunch of those in various communities all around. And they take a wide range of goods that maybe you have changed your mind about style on, or maybe you have downsized, or maybe it's time for something fresh, or maybe your needs have changed. And they take those things, and not only do they recycle those things by putting them up for resale, the money from them goes to supporting our community in the sense that they do lots of training with people, and frequently they do interventions with people who have something that is preventing them from insertion into the workforce and being a member of society. It gives that to them. So I find those are really great places. And since we are in the month of October and Halloween is coming up, they're also great places to look.
Before you get to that, Brian, let's just finish up with the textile waste. So 95% of clothes in North America that North Americans throw away into landfills could be reused or reworn or at least recycled. So what do you do with textiles? Say you could repurpose them to the places you just suggested if they're still fine for wearing. But what can we do with leftover textiles or things that so we don't want them to end up in landfills? Personally, I cut up a lot of things and turn them into rags to use at my house. So old ripped sheets or different things can be turned into a lot of different rags or cloths around the house. Do you have any other suggestions for textile waste?
Yeah, I would say so. I would go back to retail charities and say that they not only take clothes for resale, they also take clothes that they bundle and cut to rags, and then they take some others that and maybe scraps as well, and they sell them to reprocessors. And so some of those things end up as industrial fabrics. So those are all useful to them and actually do some good in our society as well. You're quite right that there's an incredible amount of cloth that's wasted in North America. In the United States, apparently it's 40% of their landfills is textile, which is astounding to me. And I just want to suggest that um, there's something that's equally horrible and wonderful, I guess, in a sense. Just recently, I read the statistic that there's $16 billion worth of stranded textiles in countries that make clothing that then ship to North America and to Europe. So $16 billion worth at wholesale prices. In that entire time that those were stuck there, and I guess they're going to remain there, in the I didn't see a lot of people without clothes on them. So we obviously buy too many clothes. So I would go right to prevention and just say, like, if you have something wearable, wear it and wear it till it wears right out. And when it's worn right out, then even donate it for that use.
Yeah, clothing swaps. Yeah, clothing swaps and ways to reuse those fashions, or maybe just choose something. Look at your. There's a big movement of capsule wardrobes to just downsize your wardrobe to the things you actually wear, and then that way you're more using them up in a way, so they're well used as opposed to having a lot of things that get very little use.
Yeah, but don't do a Marie Kondo and think I've got to go down to this capsule wardrobe. That means I'm throwing all the other stuff out. Just wear your way through it
Exactly.
until it
Yeah.
naturally diminishes. I would suggest as well, if you've got lots of fabrics, check in your community if there are quilters around. Because quilts traditionally were made from used fabrics. They were a way of
Completely. Yeah.
repurposing that. See if you know some crafters who know how to make rag rugs. Offer them to them. And once you've offered them to them a couple of times, ask them to show you how to do it. And because I've seen them done fairly rapidly by people who have more abilities than I have. And so that might be something you could do. And then you have something where you can repurpose things and put them to use in your own home or make them as a gift to somebody. I have one funny anecdote about recycled clothing. You might be surprised what happens to clothing. So there was a time when I was in a career where wearing a tie was necessary. And then the dress code changed enough that I didn't need ties. And I had probably too many ties in the first place. But I had them for a variety, so that I wasn't wearing the same tie daily. So I gave away a bundle of them. And a couple of days later, a very crafty person arrived in my class and said, "Well, I just went to the Goodwill store and I made myself a skirt out of things I bought there." Well, the skirt flared nicely because they were all ties that, it wasn't the skinny ties now, they were wide. That tells you how long ago this was or how old my wardrobe is. But in any case, so they made a nice.
That's such a funny anecdote because I sewed a tie out of skirt out of ties when I was in high school. That's really very weird that you say that.
Now, are you the kid that was in
that
my?
me?
No,
Was that me?
I think not.
That might have
But
been
anyway,
me.
so repurpose them. Like you can think about how they're repurposed. I know people that take garments and cut them down for people who are a smaller size, right? For children. So you
Completely.
can find, frequently unworn hunks of clothing that are still quite useful. So you want to connect up with those people as well and encourage them. And that's one of those things that, yeah, it's zero waste, but it's also 100% community.
Exactly.
To do those kinds of things. We know that ultimately, if we're discarding waste either into dumps or into the developing world, we're not doing them a service, we're doing them a disservice. So what we need to really do is prevent the acquisitive habits that we've got around it. We've been sold the idea that we have to buy lots of fast fashion. And to be blunt, fast fashion is garbage because they're poor quality clothes. They don't last very well. And you chuck them out and you create this garbage problem that we have.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, there's a lot of movement to see people get paid fair wages for the fashion that they're creating as well too. And it wasn't so long ago that we had things made in Canada, but good luck finding a lot of fashions made in Canada now, right? So there are some, and they're making a bit of a comeback. So we'll have to, maybe that's something we can talk about down the road too, and maybe make a workshop specific to that, because that would be really interesting.
Yeah. We have some small scale stuff happening, but it'd be nice to ramp that up. And two other things I was going to mention, and I see this occasionally. I see it on Kijiji, and I see it just on Facebook pages. Some people say, "So my kid has grown out of all of these clothes." Kids outgrow them before they wear them out. They just post them and offer them to neighbors and friends, and that makes a lot of sense to me. So you can maybe monetize them by selling them yourself, or you just offer them to somebody else. And I should probably talk about an event that I've been associated with, which is a Reuse a Palooza, which is not my original idea, but it's a brilliant one, so I stole it naturally. And it's an event where we invite people to bring in all that stuff that they know is still usable, but they're not going to use it again. And basically plunk it down, and other people decide, "Ooh, that's what I want. I need one of those." So turning over massive quantities of goods and putting it to good use. People always ask at the end, what does happen? You heard me talk about retail charities. So they get things at the end that nobody who happened to be there on the day um, picked up and took home with them. So there are lots of ways for us to reduce our footprint, to reduce the amount of stuff that goes in that bag. And as you said earlier, Carrie, to reduce the number of those stick-on tags. People get bent out of shape that they have to pay for those, but actually pay more than that in any case. So every time you reduce that, you're reducing costs to yourself, your
Right,
community,
exactly.
and your health. Yeah.
Yeah, just like if, for example, for every 1 ton of waste we generate, an average of 71 tons of waste is generated upstream before we even purchase that item. So all of your comments are really helpful for that. Let's head back to composting for a second.
Sure.
Since I like to compost in my backyard, I'm the lazy composter that just throws things in a heap. I don't have a fancy composter. But we do have a green cone in our yard as well too, because in the wintertime, we like to throw our compost in the green cone since it's a little closer to the house. You don't have to do much of anything to it. You throw your compost in there, the green cone, nothing comes out of it. You leave it as is, just like you said. And it's nice. It's good if it's in a sunny spot, and then the worms and microbes can go to town at it. But I think the green cone, we don't use it year round, because we often try to use our compost in our gardens later. So we want to have a result of the compost at the end of it. But James has a question about composting that I'd like to bring in. It says, "Hi, Brian. With all of the preservatives present in our food, I'm wondering, do you have any knowledge or expertise with the compost of food waste that has higher amounts of common preservatives such as salt?" I'm not sure if there's a specific issue with highly salted or preservative foods in compost. That might be a specific question for someone who runs a compost facility. But Brian, what do you think about that? Do you have any comments for James?
I'll take a stab at it. And because we have nobody from the health board online, you shouldn't be eating salty food in the first place. So back off buying those foods with all those preservatives in them. In any case, if you're buying salt cod from Newfoundland and Labrador, I admire you because you're supporting the Canadian fishing economy. But by and large, I mean, reducing that is an issue. If there were really huge quantities of salt, I think that would slow down the microbial action because it's going to have a drying function if you were putting it in a digester. I can't see it particularly as a problem if you're using an above ground composter. But as you say, Carrie, the advantages of a digester in wintertime is that it's below ground and it doesn't freeze when it gets really cold, so it continues to act. Whereas at about minus 20, minus 25, those being days I try not to go outside anyways. But on those days, the composter is probably not acting, the above ground one, because it's frozen at that point. So you do want to avoid too much salt in your diet for a couple of reasons, and the composter is one of those. But I don't think it's critical in terms of what would normally go in, um, unless you're eating massive quantities of really salty foods. In which case, just eat it all up, and your body will have to.
Excellent. Thanks, James, for that question. Thanks, Brian. Now, did you want to mention anything else about food rescue or food waste in Oxford County? Because the waste that comes out of restaurants and special events for food-wise is a big problem that a lot of different communities are trying to solve that problem by rescuing them and sending them to people who could use them. There's different apps and there's a whole lot of different options available. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I won't talk at length on that one, which will surprise everybody that's listened so far. But foodrescue.ca is a site that matches up people who are looking for food in order to run a kitchen that's offering people, that's doing a friendship club where there are meals involved, that sort of thing. So they make that offer of food. And what happens is that people identify they have food that's available. Other people then sort of click on it and say, I've got that. And then you go and pick it up and you move it. So that's well established in larger urban centers like Toronto, for instance, because there's a high population there. Unfortunately, there's a high population of needy people in that big city as well, despite how rich it is as a city. On a parallel way, we have people here in Oxford County, despite the fact that we produce and export food, who don't have enough access to food. So there are several people trying to get that going. There are some informal relationships already in place between some of those organizations that are doing meals from home and certain supermarkets or other vendors that sell food, and suppliers and farmers who offer food to them. Once it becomes systematic, I think it'll be very simple, and it will mean that there will be more food available to those organizations, which will mean those organizations then have capacity to offer more meals to people, or to turn their available cash, which is never enough, to other purposes that they have that they need. For instance, to do an upgrade in their kitchen so they can produce food more efficiently, or to switch out one kind of food container for another one that is more environmentally sound. So it's a really important incentive, and we don't have a food problem in Canada. We have a distribution problem. And if we can get a food rescue thing going, then we'll be in great shape to make sure that distribution happens in a right way for everybody.
In the same vein, I hear the Great Pumpkin Rescue is coming up again. You want to address what that is and how other communities could take part in the Great Pumpkin Rescue?
Yes, yes. So thanks for asking about this very official and organized activity called the Great Pumpkin Rescue, which has happened for the past few years. Again, a stolen idea. I am going to give credit to Tom Butler, who you'll hear in next week's episode, for coming up with this brilliant idea. And in the first year of it happening, I stole the idea entirely, and then he's jumped in and is doing it. So basically, this time of year, people decorate with pumpkins and squash outside their houses. And I shouldn't say this part because it's going to spoil my pumpkin rescue. But anyways, I will. And a lot of people are unaware that any kind of pumpkin is food. So you could, if you were going to carve that pumpkin the day before Halloween because the weather's cool, fine, or the day of, and put it out. Um, you could take that back in the house and either steam it and roast it, and you've got pumpkin. And you can use it for all those things that you would use a pumpkin for pumpkin pie, for all the kinds of baking, for soup. Um, don't put the spices in it. You put it in a dessert, and all of a sudden it tastes awful like squash. So there's lots of uses for that. So the Great Pumpkin Rescue is really quite a simple concept. Is that in the case of the Sweeberg Great Pumpkin Rescue, people who live in Sweeberg are going to bring their pumpkins to some giant bins that'll be at the end of a driveway at my house, actually, and they're going to fill those bins up with all those pumpkins and squash after Halloween. So they just drop them off as they're driving by. And then what's going to happen to them is two things, essentially. So a bunch of those are going to go for food. We're going to pick out the best ones, the squash and the pumpkins, the best ones that haven't been cut, that don't look like they dried up a bit. So we'll pick all those ones out, and then they'll be processed into food in the way I described. And at this point, I have three takers for them. I'm not sure about their quantities, but given that last year I had 4 bins, those bins about the size of a mid-sized car, uh, so I had about 4 bins. I think there's going to be enough for the short-term needs. And then any ones that got smashed or any ones that are looking a bit dry that still have no paint on them, no wax, I don't think we on them anymore, or haven't inserted any metal in them. All of those are going to become fodder. And one of the participants in this is actually Greener Pastures Eco Farms. So they're going to take those and they're going to offer them then to their pigs, who apparently love them. And they're actually offering an experiential piece of this as well. So if you track down that farm, again, easy, use Dr. Google, and track down that farm, you can actually go there, deliver the pumpkins there, and you can deliver the pumpkins with as high a toss as you want up and over the fence and into the field to them with the farmer present. Thank you. And then watch the pigs gorge themselves on them.
So it's turned into an experience. So people
It
can
has, yeah.
take their pumpkins and watch the pigs eat it. That's wonderful.
Absolutely. You can toss it to them and look for expressions of happiness and gratitude on
And
the pigs'
glee,
faces.
yes.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So there are locations in Woodstock. There's a location in Southwest Oxford in Sweeburg. There is a location, I'm told, in Thamesford, a farm near Thamesford, that does a similar thing to the one I described. And there are lots of other neighborhoods, and it's simple enough that lots of people could do it. All you need is a place to collect them. You don't need a bin. You could just put them on your lawn, and you need someone who has a need for all that pumpkin. And given the number of charitable food organizations we have going, I think you would find somebody in your acquaintance who would say, "Oh yeah, I could probably do something with those." And if not, find a farmer, and it indirectly becomes food because it goes via an animal and becomes something that we eat.
Excellent. All right, Brian, thank you so much for all of the answers to our questions for today. Do you have anything else to share that you'd like to share with us before we pull in Sarah from the library?
I think we've covered lots and lots, and immediately after we close the whole thing off, I'll think of the three things I didn't say. But thank you, Carrie, so much for your questions. So I better say that. And I thank all those people listening and posting questions as well. And I agree with the questions that we have a whole bunch of problems with waste. And it's like anything else. Carrie, how do you eat an elephant? Oh, wait a minute. You're vegan. You don't eat animals. A friend of mine once said, one bite at a time. So these are simple solutions that can be done in anyone's home. And you can find these solutions. And if you don't find these solutions, then dig up the wasteline.ca thing and look in it for solutions. And you'll find all sorts of brilliant ideas in it. And if you don't find the ideas in it, it actually has a way to talk to somebody at the end. So you can post a call and somebody will get back to you and help you sort out what you're doing with your waste. Where's
Great.
Sarah? I hear that she's
Yeah,
got cool things to
let's pull
tell
Sarah
us.
in. Thanks, Brian. That
Yeah.
was wonderful. And here is Sarah McDonald, the System Support Librarian for Oxford County Library Systems. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good.
All right.
Briefly,
So, oh, all right, there we are. Thanks. All right, Brian's gone. Thanks, Brian. That was wonderful. So thank you for joining us, Sarah, and thank you for back end pulling up all of our images and making it look lovely for the presentation. We appreciate the library's support. So we had a lot of interesting questions, and I just had a couple of questions for you before you share with us some of the library resources that you've pulled together for us. A lot of Brian's comments had to do with people's behavior around food shopping and what to do with food waste afterwards. Tell us a little bit about either your own personal experience with waste or maybe how the Oxford County Library System deals with waste.
Yeah, so I have to admit, I am not as much of an expert on this stuff as you guys. So I'm learning so much tonight, and that's really great. But yeah, I've got lots to learn. I am definitely trying my best, and there are things that I do every day to try and help manage the amount of waste that I am creating. One of the things that I do at home, I actually just went and pulled out some things from my cupboard to show you, is I use these reusable Ziploc bags. And this is actually something that a friend of mine turned me on to a few months ago. Because a big thing that I tried to do was reduce the amount of food that I was throwing out. And so that means you're trying to store stuff. So, you know, when you have a bit of pepper that you don't want to throw in the garbage and you can use it the next day, I was using so many Ziploc bags. So by trying to contribute in one way, I was actually contributing more in another way. So that's one thing that I do. I've got my metal straw, which I actually purchased from Habitual Chocolate here in Woodstock. So you can do two great things at once and support a local business and get your reusable straw.
That's what. Can I stop you there? Because I was thinking about ways to reduce my own waste too. And I've been getting these chocolate bars from Habitual Chocolate that come in a paper box. So I'm like, I could recycle these, but I wonder if I have one of my friends actually said that her composter toilet paper tubes end up in her composter. So I'm gonna try to rip up these boxes of just lovely paper because I can't reuse these ones for anything, and put them in my compost and see what happens. So there you go. Cool. Good idea. Yeah. That's a nice, like, we'll have to talk to Habitual Chocolate about that and see if they approve.
Yes, sounds good. Yeah, so those are sort of the things that I do in the kitchen and around food. But when you guys were talking about fashion, that's another big thing. And fast fashion is a really big topic right now. So my purchasing, I have been really trying to be conscious about buying from Canadian-made brands, buying things that are local. Some of the stuff we talked about last week is thinking about the kilometers that went into making the garment that you're wearing. And so as much as local as possible. I attend a lot of craft fairs. So I'm really sad that the One of a Kind show is not happening this December in Toronto, but that is one of the best places that I find to find local people who make their own clothes and can tell you from start to finish, this is what happens and this is where I get my material from. So again, I have long ways to go. I have lots to learn, and these kind of sessions are great for me to get tips, but those are kind of some of the things that I do. But the library is also a really great place to turn to if you're trying to make changes in your life and you're starting with your zero waste. So we've got lots of services and programs that streamline right into zero waste. Using the library is the biggest way. Instead of buying books and constantly buying the new bestsellers, just to have them sit on your shelf and then end up in the landfill or get donated to a local Goodwill or Salvation Army, borrow it from the library and then bring it back to us, and then we can lend it out to other people, and there's no waste there in that transaction. So that's one way. And then we also have a kitchen lending library. So I talked a little bit about that in our last session, but I'll talk about it again because I can't say enough good things about it. We have kitchen appliances, we have kitchen gadgets, we have tools for entertaining, we have tons and tons of stuff in our kitchen library that you can borrow for free with your Oxford County Library card. Use it, enjoy it, and love it, and then bring it back to the library, hopefully in the same condition that you took it out.
Yeah, that kitchen lending library is wonderful. Our library cards do let us use a whole lot of resources through the library. Yeah, you're right, not just books, but I've used a lot of things from the kitchen. I've got a bread maker machine from there and tried that out. Yeah, there's lots of cool stuff from there. So that's definitely worth looking up. Thank you for that. Yeah. Excellent. You have some books and resources to share with us, Sarah?
Yes. So yeah, if you don't mind, I'm going to take over for a minute and give some book suggestions that go right along with what we're talking about tonight. So again, my name is Sarah McDonald, and I am the System Support Librarian for the Oxford County Library. And if you have any questions about the library, you can find us at www.ocl.net. You can send us a question there. Check out all of our resources online. But today I'm going to give you a number of different book suggestions that I think tie along with a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about tonight. So this is Plastic Week. And so one of the books that Carrie actually recommended to me, so I think I'm going to put a hold on this book. So if you want it as well, you better hurry and get a hold on it before I do. And it's called The Plastic Purge. This book is really easy to read. And so for me, as somebody who's new to a lot of this stuff, and a lot of these books go into really big concepts. This book is actually really relatable and really accessible for somebody who's new to learning about plastics. It's got great tips on how to reduce plastics, but it also talks about how plastics affect our bodies. So if you're not quite sure, this is a really good place to start. So the next set of books I have are all for you at home that are in the vein of DIY, recycling, upcycling, reusing some of the items that we already have at home, and just trying to reduce the amount of waste that we're creating. So the first one is a kid's book. It's called Recycle and Remake. It's practical, hands-on guide. It also has DIY projects, which are really great. So one of the projects that you can learn about in this book is how to create seeded paper out of your junk mail. So you can teach your kids about plants and gardening, and then also reusing some of the stuff that we'd just be throwing out into our garbage. But it also teaches concepts to kids. So things like learning about sustainable energy, flat facts about our planet. So DIY guide and a bit of an instructional guide too. So in the line of our fashion conversation that we were having, Refashion Handbook. So this is a great book that has 19 projects that can teach you how to upcycle some of your tired clothing. Styling with Salvage. So this is a great book for people who love antiquing, or if you love going into Goodwill or the Salvation Army and just seeing what's available there. So this will teach you how to style your home with reclaimed and recycled materials. 50 Nifty Thrifty, that is a good one to say. Upcycled fashions. So again, really great for people who have extra clothing. You're thinking about maybe donating it. Why don't you try and turn it into something else? So this is a step-by-step guide, and it says it's for everyone, even those with the most basic sewing skills. So I would be able to take this one out, and it gives tips for sourcing material as well. We have The Joy of Junk. So this is a beautiful book. It's a coffee table book with great illustrations in it. And it shows us how to live stylishly and creatively with repurposed junk. So these two probably look familiar. We have Amy Poehler and Nick Offerman here. This is the Making It Guide to Crafting based on the TV show Making It, which is a competition show. And so this book looks in depth at some of the best projects from that show. And that is it. So those are the book recommendations that I have for you. If any of those titles sounded interesting and you want to get your hands on them, you can find any of them at search.ocl.net and place a hold with your library card and your PIN number. So I am going to bring Carrie back in.
Thanks, Sarah. That was wonderful. I did love that Plastic Purge book for sure. Michael St. Clements, you're right, he writes really easily, and he actually, I love the explanation of how recyclable each number of plastic is. So that goes into great detail, which I love. So thank you for all of those suggestions. They all look great.
Yeah, well, it was your suggestion to me. So thank you for that. And thanks for having me on again tonight.
Thanks so much, Sarah. We really appreciate the library and all of your support.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much. All right, everybody. So our zero waste talk is not quite over yet. We're almost done, but a couple more things before we go. Bring your own way of looking at your life outside your house, because people are always really good at recycling and composting and dealing with a waste reduction at their houses. But as soon as we get out into the world, sometimes those things change, whether we're at work, out shopping. So if you have those produce bags that you can put your produce in rather than getting plastic ones all the time, and reuse cotton or some type of make your own reusable produce bags. There's a lot of ways that you can bring your own items, especially shopping bags and water bottles, of course. Like, we should all be bringing these things with us. And like Sarah says, she's starting her zero waste journey, but she knows a lot of those things and she's making those changes. And everyone can help make their own changes wherever they are at in their life, and just be kind to each other and realize that we're all different places on our journey. I'd like to pull in Dennis Guy again from Oxford County to say some thank yous for us after thanking Brian Smith, our special guest. We'll pull Dennis in just for a little howdy do at the end. Hi, Dennis.
one more howdy do. There we go. Yeah. Well, listen, we've had a wonderful conversation here tonight. Listening to Brian, his knowledge and enthusiasm never ceases to inspire me toward a sustainable future. And Carrie, you accented him really well. It was great. Thank you, Brian. Future Oxford Partnership, appreciate your time here tonight. Carrie, an awesome moderator. You're also a waste innovator yourself and dedicated to advancing Future Oxford. Sarah at the Oxford County Libraries for co-hosting this event with us, providing some great recommendations for further reading. The libraries are great. They continue to walk the talk with sustainable practices, not just by their very nature of a borrowing system, but if you get a chance, check out their Cool Things to Borrow programs. Both Carrie and Sarah mentioned the kitchen gadgets, but there's hiking supplies, games, electricity meters, and more. Really, really cool. Things don't like this don't happen without some good work behind the scenes, and Thomasina and Jen work tirelessly to help us get the word out there and make sure we're all set up. And of course, to all of you, whether you're here in live with us tonight or in the future listening to the recording, Thanks for listening and thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks so much, Dennis. And before we head out, we just wanted to give you a little gift from us to you. We've worked at making a zero waste audit for you. So if you want to do a waste audit to find out what's in your trash, you can find an example of a waste audit. There's lots of the various ones available, but we have a Future Oxford waste audit where you can actually categorize all of the waste for a whole week at your house and figure out what it is that is going into the trash at your house. The only way to figure out what you need to stop in your waste, you won't be able to do that if you don't know what it is you're actually throwing out. So you can find out what are those things, could you actually recycle them? Find out through the waste management Wasteline app or the Wasteline widget tool to figure out what it is. Maybe it's recyclable, maybe it's compostable, maybe you've been putting it in the wrong spot for years, which is fine. Now you can know better, and now you can do some changes and figure out what that waste audit will do to help maybe improve the waste coming into your life and maybe ways to reduce it. So thank you very much, everybody. Dennis and Brian Smith, that was wonderful speaking with you. Of course, your enthusiasm spurs on a lot of people in our area. Really appreciate everyone's help making our Zero Waste Future Oxford speaker series a success. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. And we'll talking about the institutional waste and how we can deal with that in schools and hospitals. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in, and thank you for your questions.